Are you living by your values or expectations of others? And in today's episode, a Living by Your Standards series, I'm going to help guide you through how to define your values and why they are the key to creating a life that feels truly authentic to you and fulfilling. So by the end of this video, you'll understand how to identify your core values, which are the intrinsic principles that shape your personal standards, and ultimately the quality of life you create. And two, why living by external expectations, whether from society, your culture, or others, will always feel like a disconnection from your true self and lead to disempowerment. And finally, and most importantly, how to turn your values into actionable standards that help you live more intentionally and aligned with what truly matters to you. So if you're ready to stop letting both external beliefs and unconscious expectations dictate the quality of your life and your happiness, as well as your peace of mind, this video is for you. So stick around, stay with me to the end of the video, and let's start creating a life truly aligned with what really matters to you. You're probably asking, Chris, how do I start defining my values? Like, how do I know how to identify them? See, defining your values isn't just about having a list of ideals or your preferences or interests. It's about creating an internal framework that starts to shape your actions and decisions you make every single day. And ultimately, they start to shape the life you create. Your standards come from these values acting like an internal compass that keeps you really focused on what truly matters to you rather than being pulled in millions of different directions from external pressures. And psychologists call this self-determination. It comes from self-determination theory, which says that we are most fulfilled when we are living in alignment with our intrinsic values and not just by following some expectations from others like society or culture. And neuroscience actually backs this up. See, our brains actually need clear values to make better decisions with confidence. Without them, it's as if we're walking around feeling lost or second guessing ourselves or chasing external validation instead of knowing actually what fills us. So beyond guiding our choices, our standards actually also help us stay accountable. So have you ever made a decision that just didn't feel right to you, even if others thought that it was totally fine? See, that feeling isn't random. It's our mind flagging as something is out of alignment. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. And I'll dive into this more later because it is a critical, important factor in identifying your personal standards versus the ones that we have absorbed through others, like, again, society or culture or family, etc. And at the end of the day, your standards are what dictate the quality of life you create. I cannot stress that enough, and I will say it over and over because I truly believe it and live by it. They determine whether your daily choices move you closer to the future you want, or if you're just living by everybody else's expectations of you, or what you believe that society thinks you should be doing, or deems right, or correct, or successful. And that's exactly why we're going to dive into this today, so that you can also start to define what truly matters to you by identifying your core values that start to shape your standards and live by them. So how do you actually define your values? Where should you start? How can you identify them? See, there are two strategies that have been instrumental in helping me identify my core values. They are the values audit and the conditioning test. And I want to share with you a personal example of how I use these strategies to arrive at one of my core values. So one of my strongest values is deeply valuing my time. And what I mean by that is how I spend it, but also who I spend it with. But I didn't always recognize just how important this was to me. And it became clear when I started to apply these two strategies. So how did I apply the values audit? How does the values audit work? It is about reflecting on real life moments in your life, in your past, and identifying ones that have made you feel truly fulfilled, lit up, and energized and even at peace versus the ones that have made you feel frustrated, drained, or out of alignment. Because, see, our emotions are powerful indicators of what we actually value. And this is what I was alluding to. Cognitive dissonance comes in and occurs when our actions conflict with our core values, creating that emotional discomfort, which again is just a signal that something is in misalignment for you. So when I did this, I looked back at times when I felt the most energized, lit up, and also at peace and regulated. And I noticed I felt my best and at ease when I was pursuing my intellectual curiosity, like with this podcast, P.S. Your Soul, also having deep, meaningful conversations and feeling emotionally safe in relationships, whether that was in romantic relationships or in platonic relationships. And those were the moments when I felt the most alive, energized, connected, and again, at peace. And on the flip side, I felt the most drained and uninspired when I was stuck in surface level conversations or overworking just because it was expected of me, or saying yes to things that I didn't really want to do. But you know what really stood out for me? It wasn't just about time being wasted. It was actually about how I was experiencing that time. And I felt especially disconnected when I wasn't able to fully express myself and I didn't feel truly seen or heard. So that emotional safety was absent. See, that was a huge realization for me because my energy wasn't just being drained by what I was doing, but by the interaction with who I was with and whether I felt a sense of presence, connection, safety, and alignment in those moments. See, my frustration wasn't random. It was my mind signaling that the time is something I truly value. So, how did I use the conditioning test? Here's the thing. Sometimes what we think are our values are actually things that we have just absorbed from others, whether it's against society or culture or family or social media or even our peers and friends. And this is why the conditioning test comes in and it becomes really essential. It forces us to act. Do I truly believe this or have I been conditioned to think it's important to me? So for myself, again, I had to ask myself, do I really value this because it's genuinely something I care about? Or is it because I've been raised to believe or influenced to believe that productivity equals my worth? See, that's a critical distinction for me because if value is just conditioning, it can feel more like a pressure than true alignment. And when I separated my genuine belief from my external conditioning, the truth became more clear. That valuing time wasn't about productivity or efficiency at all. It was about how I spend my time and having the freedom to choose how I spend it and who I spend it with, and being intentional with how I design my day. Once I realized this, it helped me step away from the hustle culture and societal pressures, as well as help me set stronger boundaries because it allowed me to become more intentional with my energy and my time and ultimately design a life that feels more aligned with my core values. So it's your turn. I'd love to invite you now to think back at those moments in your life where you felt truly alive, lit up, and even at peace. You don't have to feel energized. It can be truly at peace and at ease versus the ones that drained you and uninspired you. Then challenge yourself with a conditioning test. Are these truly the things that I value and mean to me, or were they just handed to me? So in a moment, I'm going to show you how to take these insights and actually turn them into standards that you can live by. So stick around to the end of the video because the next part is where everything starts to click, like puzzle pieces coming together. So turning your values into personal standards isn't about knowing what matters. It's actually about making those values a part of your everyday life. So, as I like to say, these dictate the quality of life you create. And it requires what I like to call the 3 C's: clarity, conviction, and consistency. See, without these, your standards are merely just ideas and not actions. So let's walk through it together. One, clarity is all about reflection. Before you can set your standards, you need to be, again, really clear on what your values are. Take a moment to reflect on what truly matters to you. Again, use the values audit and the conditioning test to help you arrive what truly are your core values that you resonate with. So your values are the core principles that shape how you live, and they will influence and become the foundation of your standards. So for me, some of the things I value, as I shared, is my time, my creativity, and emotional safety in relationships. These values guide my decisions and the way I spend my time and who I spend it with. So think about your own values. What matters most to you right now? And it's okay. They can change over time as you evolve over time. And then define what each value looks like in action. So let's get specific here. Once you've clarified your values, it's time to break them down into practical, real world actions so you can start putting them into place and they literally become your framework of how you show up every single day. So for example, if time is a core value, ask yourself, what does living in alignment with this value look like? Does it mean I start setting boundaries around work or saying no to activities that don't align with my passion or my interests? For me, valuing time means intentionally choosing how and who I spend my time with, as I shared. And conviction comes into play when you decide that you make those actions a priority because it's about being resolute in your commitment to your values, no matter what external pressures that may come your way. And there will be plenty. So take a moment, think about each of those values and what they look like when you start putting them into actions. Write it down in your journal and be as specific as possible and feel the conviction behind them. Now it's time to turn your values into standards by setting non-negotiables. So let's convert your reflections into standards, clear, actionable, non-negotiable guidelines for how you want to live and show up every day. So standards are all about our behavior. They're the actions you commit to based on the core values you've identified. So for example, one of my standards for time, again, we're using this example again, is that I don't invest in activities or meetings that don't align with my interest or curiosity. And my standard for emotional safety in relationships is that I don't overly invest or deeply invest in conversations with people where I do not feel seen or heard. These are my boundaries and they guide the way I show up and choose to live each day and who has access to my sacred internal world. Here's where the conviction comes in. These standards are non-negotiables for me, and they will be for you, your personal standards, no matter how tempting or how pressured it might feel to be swayed. These standards reflect what matters to you, and you will protect them with conviction. So write down a few non-negotiable standards for yourself based on your values. These are the commitments that you make to yourself, no matter the external pressures or influences that will come your way. They will reflect your belief that living in alignment with these core values is worth the effort. And the boundaries you create will keep you in that space and protect your peace. So integrating standards into your daily life is now all about consistency, the last C. Living by your standards takes clarity, conviction, and consistency. To make your standards a daily practice, you need to integrate them into your routine and reinforce them and believe in yourself in these standards and set those boundaries and uphold them. This is where consistency comes in. You need to show up for yourself every day and stand by them. The way you show up for yourself every day is actually showing people how to treat you and what you are willing to tolerate from others. So finally, review and adjust as you evolve. Start by setting reminders or using any type of tool that is best and easy for you to check in with yourself and if you are living in alignment with your core values and upholding your standards. So, for example, most people in my life know that Sundays are my me days. So it's actually the way I stay consistent is literally dedicating a day in my week. And it is not just dedicated to focusing on my PSU Yourself podcast and this community, but it's also to check in with myself to see how I showed up that day. Have I been in alignment with my standards or not? And conviction comes into play here when you do not let your distractions pull you away from your standards. When you feel that pull to say yes to something that doesn't align with your values, conviction is what helps you say no, the period. So being consistent with these standards help shift the way you show up for yourself and ensures others respect your boundaries. So to wrap up, P.S. yourself, when you define your true values and turn them into non-negotiables, you're setting the foundation for a life that's intentional, aligned, and truly empowering. By practicing the 3 C's, clarity, conviction, and consistency, you start to live by your personal standards and uphold them, unbothered by others' expectations, nor setting expectations on others to meet your standards. Are you curious what happens when you start to raise your standards? Then check out this next video here where I break down the powerful shifts that start to happen when you start living by your own standards. Watch here, and thank you for watching. And if any of this was helpful to you and valuable, please help the channel out by liking, subscribing, or sharing it with somebody else that you think might gain some value. Thank you again for sharing your time with me. And remember, your standards dictate the quality of life you create.